Hello, my friends. Hello, my friends. My name is Troy Lamel Stovall. I am bebopping to some great music here because this is a very, very special TEDCO Talks. And I couldn't be more excited to have a dear friend of Maryland and just a great friend of TEDCO, Laura Gamble, who is the regional manager for Greater Maryland. Laura, thank you for being part of our 25th taping of TEDCO Talks.
Thank you, Troy. I'm honored to be the 25th. Saving the best, not for last, but for 25th.
There you go. That's exactly right. Well, again, I can't thank you enough for being on today, Laura. You have just an impressive career. A woman in banking and financial services who's been a senior leader, not just at one bank, but at two banks, which we'll learn about here. But let's start off with a little fun before we get into that. So let's dig into your past a little bit, Laura, if you don't mind. And let me ask three questions real quick. Let's find out Laura's date at the prom and what they're now doing.
Well, I have to preface this by the fact that my school did not have prom. Our big event was homecoming.
Okay.
And my senior homecoming date, should I say his name or not? I don't know.
You don't you.
I'm not. His name was Jeff. And,
okay, that's good enough.
Yeah. And as far as I know, Jeff is now living in Pittsburgh, where he was originally from. And I'm on Facebook with Jeff.
Hello, Jeff.
That's about it, right? So that's the big news.
Good. So next one, your first concert.
Well, I happen to be the youngest of the family, and I have an older sister and I have a foster sister, and my concert experience all really was being dragged along to concerts that they went to and had an extra ticket. So the one I remember as being my first was actually the Beach Boys in the Charlotte Coliseum.
Not bad at all. That's not bad. And lastly, your first car.
Oh my word. My first car was a 1977 or 78 Buick Century.
Oh yeah.
And this two-door, and if the door fell back on your leg, it would nearly chop it off because it was so heavy. And you could practically sleep on the hood. It was so long.
Yeah, that's when they make cars out of steel. That's when they you get into an accident, you had to really hit something to have a real accident in those things.
It was a tank, for sure.
Exactly. So thank you for that. Thank you for indulging me. I appreciate that. So, as I started, Laura, we said, you're the leaders here and the lead PNC bank for Greater Maryland, and thank you for that. And you actually had a career at Bank of America as well, and being leader. Why don't you give our audience, and particularly talk to a young woman who's out there thinking about a career in financial services, and how you've had to come up through that, and how you've managed the crossroads and the forks in the roads along your journey.
Well, I've had a little practice doing this of late, as I have let Troy know. We have summer interns that come into the bank every year, and I've spoken with several groups of interns in the past couple of weeks, as well as some of our early career women. We have special groups of early career professionals at PNC as part of our employee business resource group, and we also have line of business early career groups as well, our asset management group and our corporate institutional banking group. And so they have asked me similar questions. Like those folks, I came in through banking through what we now call a development program. It was a manager's training program back in the day, but it's similar to the programs we currently run. And it gives you an opportunity to learn banking. And I think that is one of the great things about banking is we don't ask you to have a specific degree. We love liberal arts grads. As long as you've had some accounting, we really believe that we can teach you everything else. So the development programs are an opportunity to do that. And that's how I came up after I actually was a teller in the summer in college. So I got a little hands-on experience early on as a teller. The toughest job in the bank, hands down, I tell people, the pressure of having to balance in those days with all your coworkers looking on going, are we going to be here late because she can't balance her drawer? It's a high stakes, high pressure environment. And the teller machine took up half your little cubicle because it was a gigantic adding machine at the time. Very different environment now. But I came into it with a little bit of a knowledge of banking, but had an opportunity to learn obviously a lot more through the training program, which lasted a couple of years. And I ultimately, when I graduated from that program, ended up in corporate banking.
Okay.
And then I've done a lot of different things. One of the other great aspects of working for a large financial services company is there was a lot of opportunity to do a lot of different things. And, it's interesting, both of the organizations I've worked for have been acquisitive. And that in and itself has also provided a lot of opportunity to do things and to get involved in transition teams and things like that. And so I really had terrific opportunities to move from line of business to line of business. Over the years, I worked on a transition early on after having been a corporate banker for about 7 years. And then that led me into treasury management, where I ended up having a very large role in treasury management and managing a P&L of about $900 million. And then I had an opportunity to move over into the mass affluent side and consumer banking with brokerage. And then I went to wealth management. I became a regional president. I mean, I've just had so many different opportunities. And I think that banking is a career that's pretty unique in that ability to provide, lots of opportunities for growth and learning within the same company. I don't know that there's that many that you can do that in.
No, I hear you, and I appreciate that telling us that. But as I hear you tell us that, you didn't use this word, but what I hear when you talk about the different opportunities you were able to pursue, the word that I also heard you didn't say was the risk. You took on some risks. You took on some bets. You didn't say this again. You bet on yourself and you bet on others betting on yourself. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I would say, that each of these moves, were a little risky in some ways. They were going to a new opportunity, place where I may not have had all the knowledge that I needed to have, and I had to get it pretty quickly. I think the biggest leap was leaping from corporate banking onto the transition team during an acquisition, because every organization has views on what's the job, and in those days corporate banking was the pinnacle. Everybody wanted to be a corporate banker, and people were like, are you crazy? Why are you leaving corporate banking? But frankly, I'd been there 7 years and I felt like I had learned all that I could learn, and I was interested for a new challenge. And so I did take a leap, and it was a terrific leap. It took my learning curve, to from there, and it gave me a lot of opportunities and to grow with, the business that I joined. And I would say that after that, I did get a bit of a reputation as someone who could move into a new area, especially one that may be underperforming, and bring some skills to that to be able to get that unit performing more optimally. And it was great because I never have been bored. I told the interns that, in 35 years, I can't remember ever being bored.
That is a great testament to both of the organizations that you've been a part of, are part of, and were part of. And again, because I think it's important for people to hear that this notion of you use the word learning curve, being able to be able to challenge oneself and not let oneself get bored, but that you have to purposely put yourself on a different learning curve, which means you're going to get challenged. It means you're not going to be the one that's going to know everything when you walk into that door, that first day one of that new opportunity.
Oh yeah, it can definitely be uncomfortable, right? You go from having sort of mastered the one business you were in or the job you were in to one where you may know very little about it. But it's an opportunity for learning and for growth. And I think that to me is what's made my career so much fun. That, and I have met just amazing people all the way around, both internally within my organizations and externally with my clients. I've just had the opportunity to meet and build relationships with really fascinating people. And because it's a relationship business when it's
absolutely.
all said and done.
I was going to say it's a relationship business, but and this is kind of leads into the law. There's an entrepreneurship. People think of entrepreneurship as starting something new and and being the next Google, but your career, the way you describe your career, is very entrepreneurial, right? And so I guess that leads me to talk. So you can talk a little bit about PNC. I think people view banks as these stodgy institutions, and that's just a place I go put my money, or a place I get money from my mortgage. But there's obviously so much more. So I guess if you could tell us a little bit about PNC that folks may not know, but actually, and then also link it to the role that it plays in the entrepreneurial community here in Maryland.
Well, it's an interesting aspect of our business that, we really have become more of a technologically based business over the 35 years that I've been in banking. And that's something that when I tell the folks in our internship program or development team that they might not always realize is that, banks, if you want to survive, you have to invest in technology. Yep. And we spend about $2 billion a year in technology. And there's actually some analysts that benchmark banking institutions by how much they do spend relative to their revenues and their assets as to whether or not they're going to be able to survive. Yep. Because obviously that's how our clients want to do business with us. And, any sort of product or service we bring up really has to have a technological aspect to it. So I think it's a different business than what people, think about, although the relationship part of it is still there. I still tell people, making loans is just as much of an art as it is a science. And that, that
people who get denied probably don't think that, but
yeah, but there are definitely lots of decision points, and they're not all done by, an automated intelligence program. There's input by people and decisions. Yeah. And I think the other aspect of my career that I think has been entrepreneurial is helping my customers' businesses grow and really enjoying, being a part of their journey through our interactions and being their banker. And that, in terms of, helping, maybe not as much the, true startup community, because banks really don't, we don't do a ton of investment in startup, and we're cash flow lenders, which means you have to have demonstrated the fact that you have cash flow to get a loan from us. But I do think in terms of the general economy, and especially with small business lending and small business services, that is one of the most satisfying aspects of what we do, because it's so much fun to build a relationship with a business and watch it grow and contribute and grow the workforce and provide jobs. I think that's really, really satisfying.
That is great to hear. And yeah, and I get obviously, you're at the stage maybe that we are at, but you clearly do play a stage as they get old, as they mature, and they generate that gap, and they think about their capital stack, as I like to call their capital stack differently, and they're thinking about how much debt to and versus equity versus other forms of capital, and the role that PNC helps in helping them push that growth even higher.
And we do invest in community development financial institutions locally, many of whom do small business lending, especially in minority communities. And I think that for us, that's a way to help businesses that can't yet access a cash flow lender necessarily, or those that need the kind of technical assistance that we can't even provide. So I do think it's there's a continuum.
Yep.
And we do try to invest on that front end.
That's outstanding. So look, we're sitting here in June of 2021. I think we all are hoping and praying that, we're coming to the end of this pandemic. But, I'll ask you to look back again, but not all the way back to your prom again, back to the back to, you started 2020. I'm sure you had plans. I'm sure you had plans for Maryland and for the bank and for yourself. And so I guess my question is, what are those plans that you started in January 2020? What, if any of those plans you actually got to see happen? That's quite part of the question. But I want to ask the question differently. What have you come out of this and saying, you know what, I learned something? What did you say? I learned this, and I got to take this away from this last year and a half of this pandemic, both personally and for the bank.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure that any of the plans that I may have made in January of 2020 actually came to fruition. It was a real challenge, obviously. We are deemed essential. We have people who are on the front lines who literally were dealing with the public throughout the entire pandemic. Yeah. So obviously the first thing that came to mind was, how do we keep everybody safe? Yeah. And we went through, multiple iterations of that to be able to serve our customers, but also to keep people safe was the first big challenge. And, I think about all the challenges that I've been through. Unfortunately, a lot of interesting challenges being here in the Mid-Atlantic and having people on the front lines. I've dealt with anthrax. I've dealt with the sniper. Wow. I had people in the World Trade Center during 9/11. We had people in the Pentagon. We actually had a branch in the Pentagon. It didn't report up to me, but so we've dealt with a lot of crises over the years, but this one was very, very different. Obviously it was a health crisis and it was ongoing. And, I think the thing I learned the most, at least from a business perspective, was really about communication and how to communicate, how often you had to communicate, and how many different modes you had to use to communicate to reach everybody. Yes. That's the thing that really sticks out in my mind. And I started a weekly email message to everyone in Greater Maryland that I wasn't doing before. On top of, we have a lot of other communication methods. We obviously have a web page. We have calls. We have a lot of different things. But I think the one thing I started was a weekly message to everyone, and I've kept that up, and I think I'm going to continue to do that because I've gotten a lot of good feedback from people in terms of how much they appreciate it. So, and personally, I would just say the thing that has really impressed me is, how much or how resilient people are. And I've been so impressed by so many people around me. I've been very impressed by my own kids whose plans have. My son graduated in May of last year at home, missing the last half of his senior semester, and all the plans the class of 2020 had pretty much evaporated. And but they've really retooled, changed course, and kept going, and I've been very, very impressed by that.
Well, a lot of places I want to go to that point because I can, as a parent myself, my daughter just finished high school a couple of weeks ago, and so, I comment. My wife and I have raised a little girly, a little princess, and I know that I have to admit that. But she had all these plans for her senior year, and they just went away. But to see how she engaged in it and just was committed to it and stuck to it. And, my wife and I are sitting there wringing our hands over it. And they just, like you said, they just marched on and they did what they had to do.
And I think that's something to be really proud of our young people for. It's been a really difficult year for them as well as everybody else. And, I think we're all a lot more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. And we're all really, I can speak as someone who's incredibly fortunate, right? I continued to work through the pandemic. So many Marylanders, were not working, and so many small businesses really faced, huge challenges, and yet many of them survived it and are, back at it and continuing to move ahead.
Anything you want on that point? I know PNC had a couple of things that they were doing to help some of these small businesses survive and thrive and come out of this. Anything you want to talk about that you guys are doing around that?
Well, obviously one of the biggest things we were doing was the PPP loans. And I have to tell you, I really appreciate the op-ed that Anirban Basu put in the Sun about bankers, because I don't know if people realized, it was a terrible time for everybody. The businesses I talked to, they were very scared. They really could see their business just, evaporating, and, really challenging circumstances. But, the working with them to get the loans in and approved by the SBA, a lot of our folks were literally working all day and all night. We had 3 shifts of people working.
Wow.
And it's not often you can say that in a service business like ours. And so it was really a huge effort on everyone's behalf. But it was really satisfying to help those customers, get that money, and it was a lifeline for so many. The other things that we've run a ton of programs. I know everybody's Zoom fatigued to death, but we have run a lot of programs around for small businesses, sort of reevaluating your business plan, reevaluating your marketing. What do you have to do to shift, going online? We had a lot of informational programs on a lot of various topics. We partner with an organization called the Acceleration Project. It's based in New York, but they are involved in a lot of places, and they consult to small women-owned and minority-owned businesses, and they helped us put on a lot of those programs. We, obviously have also continued to invest in the CDFIs and small business technical assistance programs for our community as well. And and then, we announced also in the midst of, well, not only did we have an acquisition in the midst of the pandemic, but we also announced $1 billion to end systemic racism in our communities. And a big portion of that is around financial empowerment and entrepreneurship. So, and that's through grants and lending and investments in CDFIs and other financial institutions to help our communities. And we're very close. We've been working hard with a couple of partners, and we'll be announcing where our grant money in Maryland is going to go. Hopefully within the next month, we'll be able to tell people about that.
Good. And yeah, I got to meet you through my common friend Richard Bynum, who's helping to lead that at the corporate level. And so that's probably, well, before we get, I want to actually go back. You talked about the communications, because obviously you're much larger, your state, most of the state of Maryland. And I'm sure, yes, a lot of people had to come in, but still some people had to work at home. And so that feeling of isolation, I'm sure your frequent communications help. And I guess I'd like you to talk about how you made sure that the connective tissue of PNC stayed as people were working from their homes.
Oh, Troy, that's a really good question, because it really goes to one of the things that we think differentiates us, which is our corporate culture and how we interact together. And, the question is, can you keep that going over a long period of time when everyone is remote? And, I think communication, the various modes of communication, we also ran a lot of programs through our employee business resource groups that gave people, opportunities to connect with each other and hear speakers. And we had one of our colleagues started a group for single parents.
Oh, wow.
So they could get together and talk about the challenges of homeschooling and other challenges, during the pandemic. So we really tried to give people as many opportunities to connect with their colleagues, as well as just, straight communication about things that they could do. We give mental health resources.
Yes.
in addition to just general health resources, anything COVID related, our employees did not have to pay for testing, vaccine, any of that. We covered all that.
No, I think to your point, I mean, I actually tell my friends who had little kids going through this. I mean, it's one thing to have a teenager going through this. They're self-sufficient. I half the time I didn't see our son, but it's another thing to have, a kindergarten, first grader, having them around the house all day. And I tell folks that, even though we've gone to this, this environment, I feel like even though there's this distance, there's a closeness. I got in people's homes, right? I was talking to someone just the other day and their kid is climbing on the back of their shoulder and the dog is coming through, or, my friend Tammy here, the cat walks across the screen. There's a sense of people that we got to see that we normally wouldn't get to see. And I think that blurring of the line of our professional lives and our personal lives got blended. And I think we got a sense of people that we wouldn't normally get to see. You have a similar sense?
I absolutely. And I think, we had to cut each other a lot of slack, right? I mean, people were, I have, associates who, were two working parents at home trying to also homeschool kids. And they were just really on their last nerve. And we just had to be really empathetic and understand what people were going through. And I can't tell you how many times I was on a Zoom call and had to disappear because the UPS man's ringing the front door. Everybody was subject to that. And I do think, it was one of the things we laugh about is how early on when we thought we were only going home for a couple of weeks, people are still sitting there in their suits and their outfits. And over the course of the year, the dress code really shifted. And we really would appreciate that. And people, first I would just stop going on video. And then I'd say, it's okay. I just come, I'd love to talk to you face to face. And one of my coworkers said, I have house hair. And I'm like,
that's good.
I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I'm sure I can deal with it. Let's go on video, And, but yeah, I think everyone had to be really empathetic to what people had going on. And I hope that, to your point, that is make the connective tissue a little tighter.
Absolutely.
But we do believe that we are an in-person company. I will tell you from the get-go, our CEO is saying, we're going to go back in. Because we think that's how people learn, that they learn from being with each other, from watching, people interact with their customers and being able to ask questions. So we do think it's a better environment, especially for our early career folks to learn.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So in a little time we have left, you mentioned $1 billion that PNC is committed. So let's talk about its commitment to DEI. I mean, so there's clearly been, you putting the money where your mouth is. So talk a little bit about, as much as you can, about, the efforts and frankly, just why this is important and what PNC is hoping to get out of this effort.
Well, it's part of our values, actually. Being inclusive is part of our core values we state, and we have also a set of leadership standards, and being an inclusive leader is something that we actually judge our leadership on. And so it's important in so many ways. I mean, obviously, as the community, as being in the community, we need to be of the community. We need to look like the community that we are part of. And that means not just our employees, but our customers too, right? So we look at DEI in sort of three categories. We call it workforce. Obviously, the workforce needs to represent the community. Workplace, which is celebrating diversity and celebrating our differences in the workplace. So we run a lot of great programs celebrating various heritages. We just came out of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. We had African American Heritage Month earlier this year. We'll have Hispanic later in the year. So we do a lot just to celebrate the fact that we have folks with all different backgrounds. So that's workplace, and then marketplace, which is obviously we want our customers to look like us and be comfortable. A lot of when we talk about inclusivity, I describe to our team as people being comfortable. I want customers to look inside our branches and see people that look like them and be comfortable coming in and having a financial conversation with us. I want the same of our workforce. I want, new people to come in, or, applicants to come in and see us and say, I'm comfortable here. So that's a lot of inclusivity. Equity, obviously, we've been doing a lot of work around equity and making sure that we're walking the talk and looking at people's career paths and the representation in various jobs and saying, okay, why isn't there better representation of, African Americans in this particular role? What do we need to do about it? And we've just had so many things that we've been working on for quite some time, but so it's not new to us, but we always recognize it's a journey, and we have had very open dialogue and conversation. We call them courageous conversations about the experiences of our African American colleagues in both the workplace and outside, and what can we do as allies to make that situation better. So we're proceeding along a journey.
Well, a lot there I could dig into. I know we don't have time, but I mean, everything I love there. But the notion that making people feel comfortable, because better than anybody, not all communities feel comfortable dealing with a bank or a financial institution, having their money. And I think one of my observations from COVID has been, we now can order everything. We basically becoming a cashless economy in many ways. And better than I do this, there's a ton of people who are already disenfranchised, and they're going to become even more disenfranchised because they're not because they're not bankable for any variety of reasons. And so your commentary of being comfortable really strikes at me as something that to get at those people who are not comfortable with banking.
Yeah, and talking about the folks who have been disenfranchised from banking, one of the things that we've done this year to try to make sure that we keep people in the system and can bring people back is introduce a product called low cash mode. And what low cash mode does is it gives people more control over returning checks or, and keeping them out of an overdraft position. It extends the amount of time they need to decision it. It allows them to prioritize, what do you pay? What do you not pay? The example we always use is, okay, my mortgage is coming due. I'm going to pay that. I don't necessarily need to pay my brother-in-law. He can wait. And you can take action on that. And we've really cut and waived a lot of fees that people would have, gotten prior to this around overdraft. So we think that's one of the reasons, people have been driven out of the banking system, and we want to make this more, put it back in the control of the account holder,
I love that.
not in the
outstanding. Bravo, outstanding. And then the conversational piece is one that I agree with you on. I think I've said that at a couple other TEDCO talks, that I'm hoping that if nothing else out of this, because I've done this with my other white friends, is that we can sit and have the honest conversation where the white guy can have the conversation and really be emotionally honest about what he feels. And the Black person can be emotionally honest about, and no one get offended that, because it's not about what Laura did or what somebody did. It's not about trying to place blame. It's just about allowing me to express things that I've been through and allow those who feel like that they're being, being picked on, like a lot of white males thinking feel like they're being picked on, let them express themselves too. I think sometimes we forget that they have a voice in this too. No,
and I totally agree with you. I mean, we call them courageous conversations because really it takes courage on both sides, right? Yep. And I think I've witnessed a lot of people's understanding really going to new levels that, and that just, I think having that honest conversation with a coworker that they were perhaps afraid to ask before, it has opened up new levels of communication. And we've also taken it to a couple other levels. We had a panel of customers talk to our group about what it was like, running a Black business during COVID, and what did they learn, and about sort of the inequities, And, what do we need to do to prevent that from happening? Then if God forbid, should we go through something like that again?
Yeah. Well, Laura, look, I can't tell you, this is fun. We could have kept on going. This is a subject, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being our 25th guest on TEDCO Talks. Thank you for all you do for me. We didn't even talk about, for folks that don't know, Laura is not only the leader here at the bank, but she's been a leader with a number of organizations across the state and sits on a number of boards across the state in support of Maryland's efforts. And so thank you for your service to Maryland overall. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Troy, and it's been a pleasure, and I'm honored to be number 25. and I'm sorry that I can't be there to dance with you in person.
There you go.
If you did see me dance, you'd probably know why I didn't go to prom. So there you go.
There we go. Laura, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you all for listening to all 25 of these. We get a ton of commentary on these. We really appreciate that. Continue to support what we do. So again, this is Troy Lamel Stovall, CEO and Executive Director of TEDCO. Thank you all. See you next time.